That's a tough fight.
Yeah.
That Usyk guy is talented. He's so talented. He's so small for a heavyweight too. He's nonstop movement and his footwork coming into his own, man. That's what that is. He's only like 27, right?
Yep.
Yeah, he's coming into his. That guy's scary.
UFC commentator Joe Rogan recently shared his thoughts on the highly anticipated rematch between Oleksandr Usyk and Daniel Dubois, offering his predictions for the bout. Meanwhile, Oleksandr Usyk, who has started his training camp for the rematch with Daniel Dubois, was seen showing off his energetic dance moves in the gym. The clip quickly caught the attention of the boxing world, adding more hype to the rematch and entertaining fans with the champion's lively spirit. Sharing his thoughts, Teddy Atlas expressed respect for both Oleksandr Usyk and Daniel Dubois, highlighting that he holds them in high regard not just as fighters, but as individuals as well. He went on to praise Usyk, noting that he has fought during a time when his country was under immense pressure, and that it's well deserved for Usyk to dominate his opponents and celebrate his victories with the people.
I have respect for both guys. And look, we're close to Usyk, so I'm not going to hide that. And I think a lot of both of them as men, forget about fighters, as men, I think a lot of Usyk, the man he is, what he's done really for his country, to really fight during the pressure of his country being torn apart and invaded by another country, by Russia, and to fight during those times and that going on in his country with his people, and just, like I said, just destroying what he loves, Ukraine.
At the same time, Teddy Atlas shared his appreciation for Daniel Dubois, noting how he has faced mental and emotional battles in his fights with Joe Joyce and Oleksandr Usyk. He praised Dubois for overcoming those challenges, calling it a true mark of a professional fighter. Teddy also acknowledged that Daniel has proven himself with his last 3 impressive performances.
The definition of fighting is overcoming. That's it. Overcoming. To be a champion, somewhere along the line, you got to find a way to overcome. And Dubois found that. Yeah, he gave in. I thought he gave in. He broke down. Mentally, emotionally, whatever you want to call it. Physically. But I think more mentally in both the Joyce fight and Usyk fight. But he came back. He redeemed himself. And he did what you said. He fought those 3 tough fights. And those fights, I think he would have fought them for free. At least the first 2. Because it was about redeeming himself. It wasn't about getting paid. It was about finding out who he was. Finding out what kind of man he was.
Further adding to his thoughts, Teddy Atlas applauded Oleksandr Usyk, noting that he always finds a way to win. Reflecting on Usyk's previous fights, he praised the champion for his consistency and determination, emphasizing that he can never bet against him. While he showed respect for both fighters, Teddy made it clear that he leans more toward Usyk, not just as a fighter, but also for the way he represents his country.
Anyone who thinks that it's the same fight, they're wrong. I can't go against Usyk. I can't. Because the guy, his greatest strength is he always finds a way to win. Always. The amateurs, Olympic gold, cruiserweights, unified heavyweights, goes to London, fights a bigger guy, fights him twice, beats him. Then he goes and fights a bigger guy again, fights him twice, Fury, beats him. I mean, the guy knows how to, finds a way to win. He's special, but he's getting older. I would have preferred, like I said, I have nothing but admiration for both. I have some maybe extra love towards Usyk for everything he represents for his country.
Voicing his thoughts, Fraser Clark pointed out that Daniel Dubois is now a much improved fighter and believes he will approach this rematch very differently. He praised Dubois for his powerful punching ability and noted that this fight is not a cake, but a real tough deal with Usyk as an opponent.
It gives a lot more. It's a different Dubois, it's a different fight. I think he gives a lot more problem. I think he's got a lot more confidence. I think he's starting to realise when he hits things, things fall over. You know, if he hits them often enough and clean enough, it doesn't matter who you are, if you're Usyk or whoever else. I know he's a tough man, Usyk, but if Daniel hits you often enough and hard enough, you break it. It's very simple. It's not rocket science. Saying that, I know he's in great form and that, but this Usyk, mate, he's the real deal, mate. So no one just get giddy and get too excited about Daniel, mate. We're talking about.
Fraser Clark asserted that if Daniel Dubois remains focused and disciplined, he has the potential to trouble Oleksandr Usyk even more than he did in their first encounter.
The real deal in Oleksandr Usyk. When he needs to be tough and tough, and when he needs to be super smart, he's that as well. But I think Daniel, with the wave of confidence he's got, would cause him more problems now than he did before, definitely.
Amid all this, Joe Rogan shared his thoughts on the upcoming fight between Daniel Dubois and Oleksandr Usyk. He emphasized that Dubois is a scary and dangerous opponent, noting that he's still only 27 years old. Agreeing with his guest Francis Foster, Joe admired Dubois' performance against Anthony Joshua, calling it a true display of his abilities and highlighting the real aggression he brought to the ring.
Dubois is coming into his own, man. That's what that is. He's only like 27, right?
Yep.
Yeah, he's coming into his own. That guy's scary. He's dangerous.
And you know, the interesting thing is that at least the press in the UK, they didn't give him a hope. Everybody
Really?
was talking about, like when Joshua gets Dubois out of the way, then we can move on to the next fight. And this is a fight that we want to see.
It seems like Joshua believed that going into that fight. It seems like he believed that he was just going to dominate him.
Yeah, and he just got ruthlessly exposed. The power of Dubois. I remember I bought into it. I was like, okay, so I'll watch it, but this is going to be a stepping stone match. It wasn't a stepping stone.
Aggression too, man. He was so aggressive.
Discussing his thoughts on the battle between Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois, Joe Rogan noted that the fight turned out to be a devastating one, where the world witnessed Joshua getting taken down. He emphasized that while Joshua's fight with Francis Ngannou was seen as a sign of his comeback, it was Dubois who truly crushed those hopes by dominating him and potentially ending his run at the top of boxing.
In the pocket constantly, just forcing Joshua to go to war. It was wild.
Yeah, and it rapidly became apparent that Joshua couldn't match him. He just couldn't go to war with him. And at the end, this showed what the fight was like. Everybody was like, look, to Joshua, I think you're done. And nobody predicted
that crazy?
that.
Right after he knocks out Francis Ngannou, and everyone's like, you're back.
Yeah.
I mean, he flattened Francis Ngannou, and everyone's like, oh, Joshua's back. Look how good he looked.
Yeah.
Hey, man.
You mentioned.
Meanwhile, Francis Foster noted that Daniel Dubois is once again set to face Oleksandr Usyk. He emphasized that Usyk possesses incredible technique. Joe Rogan agreed with Foster's assessment, adding that Usyk's relentless movement and exceptional footwork consistently confound his opponent, just as he did with Anthony Joshua. Foster also observed that while Joshua is a remarkable physical specimen, he was completely outclassed by Usyk.
Entered the stadium on a gold throne carried by people. I'm like, bro, he ain't gonna retire anytime soon, man.
He's fighting Usyk again.
Yeah. Oh, man.
That's a tough fight.
Yeah.
That Usyk guy is talented. He's so talented. He's so small for a heavyweight, too. He's nonstop movement and his footwork and everything. It's so different than anybody else. Joshua didn't know what to do with him. He's like, where is this guy going to be when I'm throwing punches? He was moving all over the place.
Yeah, it's
so different.
It's so different. I remember when I was watching the Joshua Usyk fight, it made me realize the importance of technique, because Joshua is a real physical specimen.
Drawing a comparison, Francis Foster claimed that Daniel Dubois might struggle, noting that he doesn't possess the elite level techniques that Oleksandr Usyk has. Joe Rogan joined in, sharing his thoughts on the Anthony Joshua bout with Usyk, and highlighted the advanced skill set expected from a heavyweight at this stage of the sport. He pointed out that both Vasily Lomachenko and Oleksandr Usyk were trained by Lomachenko's father, which is a key reason they maintain such exceptional technical ability.
Doesn't have that elite level of technique that Usyk had, and you could see the combinations, the way he was throwing punches. He just didn't have an answer to it because he's never been exposed to that level of technique.
Well, you know what it is? He's a heavyweight. And the heavyweights were never really that good in terms of that kind of technique. It's like you need it at like middleweight and light heavyweight because everyone's super talented and technical. When you get up to the heavyweight division, it tends to be like a lower bar. And so when you have an elite athlete like Joshua, who's like fast and knockout power, he can excel without having the kind of technique that a guy like Lomachenko and Usyk were trained by the same guy. They were both trained by Lomachenko's father. So they both have extreme technique. And then you have Bivol and Bitter Beef that just fought. Same thing. Both like super Soviet style boxing, and you go, whoa, like this is technique. Like,
despite expressing concern for Daniel Dubois, Joe Rogan and Francis Foster emphasized that Dubois possesses a natural, raw power instilled in him from a young age. Rogan noted that Dubois also has impressive technique and pointed out that in their first fight, Dubois engaged Usyk multiple times. However, once Dubois began to slow down, that's when Usyk capitalized and broke him down.
Force of nature, it's that technique he has, which has been instilled in him from basically the moment he could walk.
Technique and huge. And if you watch the Usyk fight, he was touching Usyk up in the beginning of the fight.
Yeah.
I mean, that reach and that jab, the accuracy that he has, he was doing really well in that fight until he started to slow down a little bit. And Usyk wound up just catching him.
Breaking down the fight, Chris Eubank Jr. weighed in, noting that both Oleksandr Usyk and Daniel Dubois are coming off massive wins against top-level opponents. He observed that the outcome of this fight will largely depend on the mindset of both fighters, but stressed that Daniel Dubois is currently operating on another level.
I think Daniel Dubois, he's on a roll. He's coming off of a massive win against AJ. Usyk's also on a massive roll, so I think that fight's going to come down to...
Meanwhile, Chris Algieri also emphasized that the rematch between Daniel Dubois and Oleksandr Usyk will be different. He stated that since their first fight, Dubois has faced two big-name opponents and has proven himself to be a true underdog. Algieri added that this time around, Dubois is coming in with a different energy and could potentially perform at an entirely new level.
But the narrative is much better for the Dubois rematch. You've got the fact that they fought, and then since then, Dubois has been on a tear, beating guys that he was the underdog against, Ergovich, and then Anthony Joshua, of course. The guy has really revamped his entire career, turned it around, gone from a guy that people saw as a quitter to being potentially the most dangerous man in the world. So you've got this narrative now that Dubois is a different guy, so this rematch will be different. Also, you have the fact that Usyk, in the ring after his win over Tyson Fury, Dubois came into the ring, challenged him, and Usyk said, Your Excellency, Turkey, make the fight with Dubois. He's a man of his word. That guy says something.
Reflecting on his thoughts, Dune McKenzie pointed out that this fight is the best of the best, with two heavyweight champions going head-to-head. He noted that although he admires Oleksandr Usyk, he holds great respect for Daniel Dubois. Looking back on Dubois' fight with Anthony Joshua, he observed how Daniel managed to change everyone's perspective with his impressive fighting skills against Joshua.
Usyk and Dubois is the best of the best. We've got the two best heavyweights on the planet going head-to-head again. Now, I'm a big fan of Daniel Dubois. I'm probably a bigger fan of Dubois than I'm of Usyk. I like Usyk also, but I like Dubois and I like everything he stands for, everything he represents, and the way that he carries himself. Tip Dubois to beat AJ, and at a point where the whole nation or a lot of people were picking AJ to win, I looked at Dubois and I thought to myself, you know what? He's a good all-rounder. He's got some good moves. He hits hard, jabs well, good stamina. So there was a lot of tick boxes, and then I did the tick box on AJ, and Dubois came out on top for me.
Despite the praise for Daniel Dubois, McKenzie revealed that his favorite is Oleksandr Usyk. He noted that if Dubois were fighting anyone else, he would have picked him to win, but against Usyk, it seems difficult for Dubois to secure a knockout. He highlighted Usyk's incredible fighting abilities and called him a fighting machine who gives everything he has in the ring to win.
On top for me. If he was fighting anybody else other than Oleksandr Usyk, I'd pick him to win. But he's not going to beat Usyk. I don't think so. Some people are saying in the boxing fraternity that Usyk's got a lot of miles on his clock now. He's looking tired, he's looking jaded. No, he's not. Not in my opinion. The guy's like, his engine's like a Rolls Royce engine. He purrs along comfortably. He goes up through the gears comfortably. You don't see him getting cut. You don't see him getting knocked down unless it's a low blow. He just does most things effortlessly, and he wins rounds. He might not start off great, but he always wins the end of the round. If you know what you're looking at, and you look at Oleksandr Usyk, for a heavyweight, he's a complete fighting machine. He can box, he can fight.
Along with the guests, Duke McKenzie went on to highlight that Oleksandr Usyk possesses exceptional athleticism and reaffirmed his belief that there is no one on earth capable of beating Usyk. His guest, though, played the devil's advocate, pointing out that Daniel Dubois' improvement and aggressive win since his first fight with Usyk are worth noting.
Counter punches well, attacks well, works you up and down. You know, he's very, very systematic in what he does. And you know, like I say, if Dubois was fighting anybody else, I'd back him 100%. But I don't think there's a heavyweight on the planet who can beat Usyk right now.
Yeah, this isn't going to be much of an argument because I agree with everything you've said, but I am going to be devil's advocate in this conversation. People will say that Dubois has had a chance to improve, that he has improved, that he's produced impressive wins, that he bounced back from what was a humiliation by Usyk. He was stopped with a jab in round 9. He was broken down by Usyk in Wroclaw. Myself and Barry Jones were lucky enough to be sitting right behind the low blow. That wasn't there was a low blow, of course, but
on the other hand, Adam Booth made an argument for Daniel Dubois, noting that this fight would be much different. He stated that Dubois' performance in the first fight was somewhat old school, but after testing his stamina with Joe Joyce and Anthony Joshua, he has proven that he is a force in his own right. Booth believes that given these improvements, Daniel Dubois would pose much more trouble for Oleksandr Usyk this time around.
To the first one. I can make much more of an argument for Dubois in this fight.
Me too.
Firstly, because he actually had success in the first fight.
He did. Do you think it was a low blow?
No.
No.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
You do think it was a low blow?
Absolutely was. If you look,
you do?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, sorry. You caught me out then with the question. If you watch, it lands low, and while it's got contact with the shorts, it actually rides up at the point of impact.
So I've no use to my argument.
But it's irrelevant because they're going to fight again. Usyk won the first time, and as he said, he won by stoppage. But Daniel Dubois is a different fighter now. Fighting is 90% mental, and he is a completely different fighter mentally. He lets his hands go with freedom. He now trusts his engine because he had those rounds with Jarrell Miller that tested his engine. So he's kind of ticked the little boxes along the way, old school style. He's a much better fighter now than the one that fought Usyk the first time. Usyk is a more experienced heavyweight now than he was in the first fight, but I'm not sure he's necessarily a better fighter because he was already fully accomplished back then.
Further adding his perspective, Adam Booth stressed that while Oleksandr Usyk is an experienced fighter, he hasn't seen any significant improvements in him since his last fight. He also pointed out that typically, fighters who win their first bout are considered the favorites in the rematch. However, Booth expressed confidence in Daniel Dubois' ability to win this time and believes he can confidently bet on that.
Heavyweight now than he was in the first fight, but I'm not sure he's necessarily a better fighter because he was already fully accomplished back then. So for me, it's a much closer fight. Now in a rematch, the smart thing to do is always go with who won the first fight. If you got to put your house on it, choose that. Secondly, we're talking about Usyk. So if you force me, I would say, okay, well, if I got to do it, I'll go Usyk. But if you gave me the freedom of expression, there's a lot for me to say, actually, you know what? Dubois is actually a good bet on this one.
Furthermore, breaking down how Daniel Dubois should approach fighting Oleksandr Usyk, Adam Booth shared his suggestions. He noted that Usyk is a clever fighter, and in his last fight, Anthony Joshua tried to beat him by focusing more on the body, but ultimately failed. Given this, Booth believes that if Dubois comes in throwing more punches and utilizes his size advantage, he might have a real chance to win.
Because he just applied his size on him. Look at the two AJ fights. The first fight, I thought Usyk won it a canter. The second fight, all AJ did differently was that you try to apply himself a bit more physically and attack the body a bit more. And you saw that it took more out of Usyk energetically to get the same result. And I see a similar thing happening with Dubois, that if he just goes out there and just if he forgets who he's fighting, has no respect for the man, applies his size and just lets his hands go, and every time Usyk gets clever with him, just keeps going forward and throwing his hands, his size and his natural size advantage and power is going to ask a lot of questions.
I think Daniel's capable of doing that. Because
Absolutely.
I think
Speaking on how much improvement Daniel Dubois has made, his coach Don Charles weighed in, highlighting that during his first encounter with Oleksandr Usyk, Dubois was only 25 years old, and now at 27, the age and maturity difference is significant. He went on to say that Dubois is now both mentally and physically stronger, having shown dominance against various opponents since the Usyk fight. Charles also described the result of the first fight as unfair, stating that Dubois clearly won the first half, while Usyk took the second.
Where do we start?
Has he changed physically or mentally?
Most definitely. He's a young lad. People forget how young Daniel Dubois is. He's now 27. So when he had that fight, he was 25 years old. Okay, and he went out to Poland, represented, delivered what we believed, what we'd been rehearsing. Like you said, we'd only been together 3 months prior to that first encounter. Nevertheless, he won the first half of the fight and Usyk won the second half, if there's any such thing. You get that in football, but you don't get it in boxing, unfortunately.
Adding more details, Don Charles pointed out that Daniel Dubois is now physically and emotionally much stronger than he was in their last fight. Backing him, Adam Smith also admitted that Dubois is not only mentally more mature and grown as a man, but also at his physical and psychological peak. He highlighted Dubois' aggressive win since then as a clear sign that he's going to deliver a very different performance this time around.
Physically, mentally, technically, and as a human being, he's grown up. He's done a lot of growing up, you know. So there's so many factors that adds to what the Daniel Dubois that you're seeing today.
We can see that, Don. It's there for all to see. From where he was back in the summer of 2023, you'd had him only for really 5 minutes, to see what he's done with Miller, with Hrgovic, with Joshua, against all the odds at Wembley.
Correct.
And Spencer and I, we've been there. We've been inside your gym. He's a different guy. He's mature psychologically. He's right now. He's an incredible physical specimen, but I think it's mentally that he's really got it. And at 27, this is the opportunity now.
That is all for today here at Ring Rivalry. One thing's for sure, this rematch isn't just a fight, it's a statement. Usyk's technique versus Dubois' raw power and growth. Who takes it this time? Let us know your pick in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for all the latest fight breakdowns. Until next time, stay sharp, fight fans.